Maiden speech, Aphra Brandreth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Southampton Itchen on his maiden speech. This is my maiden speech, and I have to tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I arrive in this place fired with enthusiasm. So much so that my whip has warned me that I need to be careful that's not how I end up leaving this place. Fired with enthusiasm. I'm a new woman representing a new constituency, Chester South and Eddisbury. Without doubt, one of the most beautiful, one of the most extraordinary and inspiring parts of the United Kingdom, encompassing the southern wards of the great city of Chester, the ones below the River Dee, and then many and varied villages in the heart of Cheshire. Audlem, Bunbury, Wimbury, Wrenbury, Weaverham, Leitch, Hambridge, Christleton and Huntington, Tarpley, Tattenhall, Tarvin, Kelsall, Cuddington, Farndon and Malpas. These are just some of the names of the very special places with which you and this House are going to become quite familiar, I hope, in the coming years. Much of my constituency is rural, which is one reason why I found the King's speech so disappointing. This government professes an ambition for growth. If so, it is simply extraordinary that there was no mention of the contribution of farming to our national economy. Food is fundamental. The contribution of the countryside to our country is incalculable. And a government that is so metropolitan in its outlook that it fails to understand that and reflect it in its agenda is, in the context of today's debate, both missing an opportunity and in need of an education. My constituency is both urban and rural. Our country is both urban and rural. Understanding the importance of both and the necessary balance between the two is key to our country's future economic and societal success. The joy of my constituency is that it includes a rich range of dynamic village communities and a swathe of one of the greatest historic cities of Europe, the matchless city of Chester, a business and tourism hub that faces challenges, of course, from basic connectivity to burdensome business rates, yet boasts many successes, among them the major employers in the Chester Business Park and the University of Chester, whose business school falls within my constituency and at which no less than 27 Commonwealth countries are represented among its staff and students. In the International Barometer Survey of 2023, the university was named in the top 10 nationally in 20 categories, including a top 3 and 4 top 5 category placings. Yes, Chester's potential is unlimited. I shall seek to ensure that this government gives it the fullest chance to bloom. There are also fantastic schools in Chester South and Eddisbury, some of which I have already had the pleasure of visiting, and many more that I look forward to going to over the coming months. Alongside our excellent state schools, we have 2 independent schools, educating over 1,600 pupils, including nearly 400 students with SEND support who do not have ECHPs, and so will face VAT under the government's current plans. Plans which will reduce choice for parents and increase pressure on the state school system with no clear benefit to any of our young people. Chester South and Eddisbury has much to offer. From the glories of Delamere Forest, which welcomes more than 750,000 visitors each year, to the excitement of Alton Park Racetrack, to Peckforton Castle, the home of civil weddings in England. I say that advisedly, Madam Deputy Speaker, because it was the then owner of Peckforton Castle who inspired a former Member of Parliament for the City of Chester to introduce a private members' bill that became the 1994 Marriage Act, and for the first time allowed civil weddings in this country to take place in venues other than registry offices. Castles, historic houses, hotels, Chester Zoo. Some might argue that this single piece of legislation has done more to contribute to happiness in England than any other legislation of its time. The former member who introduced this legislation, who I know quite well, in fact, I have known him since I was born. He reminds me regularly that his 1994 Marriage Act illustrates how in this place, an ordinary backbencher can make a difference. And I hope to make a difference in the years to come. Not only by badgering the government about delivering local bus services and improving mobile phone and broadband connectivity, not only by demanding that they back our farmers and ensure the investment and infrastructure our villages and city need to thrive, but perhaps also by introducing legislation of my own in the fullness of time. So I draw inspiration from my constituency and from my predecessors. Not only my father, who was the member for the City of Chester in the 1990s. Madam Deputy Speaker, Mr. Speaker will know both how marvellous and sometimes how irritating it can be to have a parent who was themselves a member. But also on the government benches, the newly elected member for Chester North and Neston, who previously represented the City of Chester and who I'm looking forward to working with on matters of mutual benefit to our constituents. I particularly share with my predecessor in Eddisbury, Edward Timpson, his inspiring passion for education and his concern for the care and development of young people. Another of my distinguished predecessors from whom I've learnt is Stephen O'Brien, who in his maiden speech a quarter of a century ago said something that I, as someone who served in the civil service for more than a decade and who then went on to run a small business, can wholeheartedly echo as I visit the many small and medium-sized businesses in my constituency. The prosperity of those businesses is primarily dependent on less government, less tax, less interference, and above all, a release from the stranglehold of regulations choking as they do a business's ability to compete and an entrepreneur's incentive to take the risk. With such a constituency and such predecessors, I know that I stand on the shoulders of giants with much to do and prove. Madam Deputy Speaker, the House of Commons Library, who I have to say I'm already finding invaluable, advised me that I'm the first Member of Parliament in its entire history to have the forename Aphra. I am named after Aphra Ben, the 17th century playwright, poet and author who was the first British woman to earn her living as a writer. The great 20th century novelist Virginia Woolf said of her, "All women together ought to let flowers fall upon the tomb of Aphra Ben, for it was her who earned them the right to speak their minds." What a privilege it is to be in this place, in the 21st century, able to speak my mind on behalf of my constituents across Chester South and Eddisbury. Thank you.